Hello peeps, Dee here. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my studio. Welcome to this little tutorial. Now I thought about putting this in the members classroom, but then I realized, my members know who I am, and they're probably familiar with this book that I wrote in 2007. I have written 3 books. This book has been around for a while. And every now and then, I feel the need to go back to my roots. And it's hard for me to believe that this book is that old, but it is. So today, I went back into my book and I decided we're going to do something. And it's going to be this, texture plates. And from the texture plates, we are going to make a piece of jewelry. Now, polymer clay. This is polymer clay. If you don't know about polymer clay, just watch. If what we do today interests you, then dive back into the basic tutorials and you'll get some kind of feeling for what it is and how you work with it. And believe me, if you get involved in polymer clay, it's kind of endless. The things you can do, the things you can incorporate with the clay. And, it's quite a wild and a wonderful world. So let's get started. Okay, peeps, here's what you're going to need if you're going to try doing faux cloisonne or faux enamel in polymer clay. You're going to need polymer clay. I'm using black Kato POLYCLAY. You're also going to need scrappage. Yeah, because we have to make our mold or our template. Scrap clay. You're going to need liquid clay and a brush. Yeah, helps. Now, it's also going to help if you actually draw your design out on a piece of paper. I'm using deli paper and a very soft lead pencil. Ta-ta. Okay, now, tinting, the fun stuff. Well, first of all, have one of these guys, ball stylus. No, for tinting, you're going to need perfect pearls or some other metallic powder and brushes. The thing about perfect pearls is that there's some kind of binder in it, so it sticks really well to polymer clay. And they're pretty. Okay, so you'll need a selection of those. You're going to need acrylic paint. I'm using iridescent rich gold or riche iridescent. Yeah. And you're going to need finding and glue. I use this Loctite Ultra Gel Control. And when I'm doing pins, I really like using Tie-Tax. So Tie-Tac glue. Finally, here we are at the end. Take a look at these. So all of this shiny stuff, well, that's UV resin. Now, you could do it with liquid clay, you could, but I chose to do this, Let's Resin. Yeah, this stuff is really fantastic. Of course, you need a UV light for it, but it's just so fast, 120 seconds and boom. Perfect, P-I-R-F-I-C-T. Okay, so now you know what you need. Let's get started. Oopsie, I forgot one thing. This is Abranet P150. You could use P180. You could use P230. But basically, you're going to need some sandpaper. If you don't have Abranet, you can use wet dry sandpaper, like 400 grit should do the trick. And just because it's easier and it doesn't crunch up my hands, I wrap it around a little sponge. I really think that's it. Okay, yeah, so these are the things you're going to need in addition to your normal stuff, you know. And I consider blades, pasta machine, scalpel, I consider those kind of normal things. So that's it. Now we're really ready to get started. So what we're doing is actually first making a texture plate. Now you can see here all these various gray and browny gray pieces. If you look closely, you can see that, yeah, some of the clay has been pulled out in a pattern. Wings. This is just something I made yesterday. Here's another one. And the beauty of this is these are made with my scrap clay. You see, you don't throw any clay away. It turns into things like texture plates. Yeah. So there's very little waste. And so that's what we have to do. Yeah, exactly. So let's begin. Now, what I would advise is that you make a little drawing. I made a boomerang. No insult meant to Aboriginal people or Australians, but I like the shape. The patterns, the Aboriginal patterns are amazing. And I think that they have meaning and significance, the patterns. So I just kind of did something very simple. As I said, I don't wish to impede or encroach on anyone's culture. Okay, so there we go. Just that I love them. Now I've taken my scrap clay. Now this is a combination of many colors. You can see probably primarily black and white, but I'm sure there are many other colors mixed in there. So I'm just going to press this, and I've rolled it through my pasta machine. Pasta machine is one of those things that's the most expensive tool you'll probably get, is your pasta machine. But I'm going to tell you, when I started, we didn't have pasta machines, and pasta machine makes me so much more productive, and so many tasks so much easier. So once you get involved in polymer clay, if you do, you're going to want a pasta machine. Okay. Now, I drew this in just regular old pencil, a Crayola pencil. So what I'm going to do, and I drew it on deli paper. I get this deli paper from, I think I got this one from Costco. Anyway, I'm using it like a transfer paper. I drew the pattern directly onto the paper, and now I'm just going to put it pencil side down onto the clay. Rub a bit. And let's just transfer the pattern. I probably should have made this scrap clay a bit lighter so that you could see it a little more easily. But what happens is the pattern is transferred. It's kind of faint. I couldn't find my other pen. I have another pencil that's a very soft pencil. And of course that means there's more graphite that transfers. All right. So let us take one of these guys. Now this is, I've always called this a ball stylus, but it's used in nail art. It's used for a lot of different things. So I don't know what you call it in nail art. I still call it a ball stylus because there's a ball on the end. Now I'm going to be using this ball as opposed to something sharp like this or even like this, because what I want to do is I want to move and pull the clay through, but I don't necessarily want to scrape and scratch it. Okay, so this ball should theoretically roll through the clay much easier. Okay, so let's start kind of in the middle. In the middle. Here's the middle line. I'm just taking my ball stylus and I'm going over. Now with each pass, I'm actually making it deeper. And the deeper I go, the higher the walls of my finished product will be. The goal here is to dig down and scrape through to the same depth through the whole pattern. Is it possible to do? Probably, theoretically it is. Have I ever done it? Probably not. Probably not. If you look at these, you can see that maybe this part might be a little more shallow than this part, but this is our goal. Next, let's do the spiral. And you can see that the ball stylus does pull up a bit of the clay as I'm cutting. Now, let me just zoom in. Let's do this a little bit tighter. Okay, so in we go, and around, and that ball is pulling the clay up. You can see it collecting on top of the ball, like that, you see, just like that. And I will continue to do this for a few more strokes so that I make the channel that I'm digging out nice and deep. Now I'm using kind of, it's not the finest of the ball styluses I have. I have some that are quite a bit bigger. The balls are bigger. And of course, if you use a bigger ball, let's say something like this, you're going to be digging out a channel that is much wider. I didn't really want to do a wider channel, so let's move on to this guy. And continue to dig. Now, I also do another, well, there's another technique. Of course, there are many ways of doing something like this, but I do another one where I actually draw and then I cut with a scalpel around the lines. Okay, and that's, it depends on what you're doing. And it really kind of depends on whether the lines meet, because pretty much in a case like that, here's one that I cut out, see? I cut it out with a scalpel. But you can't have a decorative element in the middle here. Everything has to be connected. So that's another consideration when you're doing something like this. You can do the cutout with the scalpel if your design elements are all connected. Something like this could have been done, well, actually, I did cut this like this. I cut out a wing, and then I made a mold of the wing on both sides, okay? So you have options, you have choices. Okay, so let me continue here. Like so. And then, of course, you want to get all these bits out of the channel. You don't want any bits sitting in the channel. We're going to deal a little more with that at the end. But you have seen how it's done, basically. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, I still have to cut out, I have to actually do the rest, but it's going to be important to brush all these little bits off and get them off and out of those channels. We want the channels to be very clean so that when we use this template, we don't end up with, well, bad looking channels. I think you understand. All right, I'll be back. Okay, peeps. So pretty much I dug the channels out. Like that. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to put those dots in. Because why not? Okay, and now finally I am going to go around the perimeter. Now this gets a little bit difficult sometimes when you meet these those little ends. Yeah, so you might want to do this a little bit slowly, like just kind of trace it a couple times. Okay, we made it that far. All right, something like that. So just go lightly first and then keep making it deeper and deeper and deeper. If you try to get it the first time, what happens is you just, well, okay, whenever I've tried to do it in one fell swoop, it doesn't work out well. Okay, so at the intersections, you're going to make sure that they're clear like that. If you have any clay, you're going to scoop it out. Like so. And take your time when you do this. It's actually kind of a pleasant exercise, I find. Okay, so there's one, and I will continue. I will go around the whole boomerang and I'll be back. Okay, so I went over everything. Now I'm just taking a soft brush and trying to get rid of all those little bits. And lastly, I am going to look at the channels, and any place I see something like little bits. Actually, these all seem to be pretty loose. There's one right here. Okay. So you're just going to look at the channel. Any problems or issues you see, just go lightly over again. You see, this ball stylus is going to give us a nice round top to the channel. Okay. Oh, this needs to go out. Take that big hunk out. Let me remove that. Okay, good. And I will go over these again. Trying to make them as deep as the channel. Looks like I'm making them a bit deeper. That's okay. I think we're going to be okay. At these corners, sometimes I just take off that extra bit of clay. There's my oven. There's a bit there. I don't want these bits to be cured because then I've got this hard little bit of clay that I've got to deal with, don't I? I'm not too concerned about this surface because we're going to sand. All right, so let me cut the excess from around. Because I'm not going to cure all of that. Have enough to make more templates. Or the cores of beads, or a whole bunch of other stuff. All right, now this is going to be cured, and then I'll be back. All right, it's out. You can see. Now, don't take it off the tile. It's going to help you because now you're going to sand the surface. I am using P150 Abra Net, and I've just wrapped it around this little sponge I have. Now, I want to flatten this out so that this surface is nice, but also I'm knocking off any bits of clay that I had up there. It's just going to make a much cleaner impression. Okay. Now, sanding also makes the clay, the cured clay, less likely to have the raw clay stick to it. Yeah, because raw clay doesn't like sticking to surfaces that are textured. Just doesn't like it. It likes smooth, slick surfaces. That's what it really likes to stick to. If you've ever tried to put clay on an unglazed ceramic pot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You take the clay, you try to push it on, it falls up. Because it is a surface that polymer clay doesn't particularly like. Okay. That looks good. Now, I'm going to take it over here, take my brush, and try to get all of that sanding, that clay sanding grit out of the mold or the texture plate. Okay. That looks pretty good. I have to do a little bit more. If it's like really problematic for you, yeah, see, look, I'm just pulling up more. You might even want to take it to the sink and take a brush. Just go through the channels to try to get it out. Now, one thing, I work with clay a lot, but whenever I'm doing something like this, or even with paint, I try to be careful about what I leave in my plumbing, if you know what I mean. So if you're going to take something like this and rinse it and you've got this clay grit, just keep the water running for a while. If you're going to be doing anything with soap, put some, with paint, like acrylic paint, which we're going to be using, then definitely put a drop or two of soap in the water, and that way you won't get a buildup of acrylic paint or paint in your plumbing. Okay, so here we go. That looks pretty good. Actually, I'm going to take my own advice. I am going to take a toothbrush. You know, I have about 1 million toothbrushes because I bought cheap toothbrushes specifically for polymer clay. I must have 10 of them. You know what? I can't see one. Oh, I see one. I see one. Yeah, I bought all these cheap toothbrushes just for clay. Okay, that's good. Okay, now we're ready to use it. Okay, now the tinting that we do is going to be done with these perfect pearls. These are my perfect pearls. They're very old. I've had them forever. I did have to look on the internet to make sure they still make them, and they do. Now, I will tell you, they might not make these colors exactly, because, you know, products change. But, yeah, these are from Ranger Ink. And they are called Perfect Pearls, and they are still sold, thank heaven. Now, some of them are interference colors. In other words, this one looks pink, but when you put it on the clay, it kicks back something very blue. This one is not an interference color. It's just a green metallic, so you're not going to get that secondary color when you use it. It's gold. This one is green and it kicks back emerald pearl. But this kicks back something that's kind of goldy looking. So you're going to do some experimentation with your powders. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to take black clay and then just brush them on. Now you can layer them. I do that a lot. So I'll use one color and then layer another color on. I haven't done this in a very long time. You can see how old they are, and they're just kind of, yeah. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to use the blue and the violet. Let's use this Forever Red. Forever, it's Forever Red, and maybe a little gold. Definitely, I love this one, the Emerald Pearl, so we're going to use that somewhere. Who knows? Those might find their way in too. Now, when you're using powders like this, in my experience, they show up best. You get the best metallic effect if you work on black. Okay? You guys can try whatever colors you want, but this is what I use. I always use black for this purpose. Now, also, we are going to be using some acrylic paint later, the gold, and so the gold as well shows up best on black clay. I have tried it on gold. I take gold clay, roll it out, put the gold paint on, and it looks kind of like nothing. So I always use black. So let's use our template. Now it's still stuck to the tile. Eventually it's not going to be stuck to the tile. It's going to come off. But since it's already on the tile right now, I'm going to take advantage of that and just work off the tile. I need a resist. I'm going to take this clay that I have rolled through setting number 2. It's not the thickest, it's not the thinnest, it's somewhere in between, but it is a little on the thick side because I'm going to be pushing this clay down into our template or our mold. You can call it a mold as well, trying to get this clay way down deep in those channels. All right, so it's got to be a certain thickness in order for me to be able to push this clay deep into those channels. So I need a resist. I can use water, I can use cornstarch. Cornstarch is dry, water is wet. In a case like this, I don't really have a preference. Problem with cornstarch is it might leave a slight film on the black clay. So let's go with water. So I'm just going to flood the zone with water, like so. Yeah. Then I'm going to take my clay, and this is like more clay than I need. So just lop that off. Lop this off, lop the sides off, like so. I'm going to lay it on here, and this is equally important. I'm going to spray the back of the clay with water. You know why? Because I don't want it to stick to my acrylic rod. I am going to take this clay, I am going to push very hard, try to roll one time straight across. Okay, so I'm going to move everything out of the way. I'm going to stand up so I can get some weight behind my good old, this is called the Boss, by the way, this acrylic rod. And now I'm trying to go equally, but I'm right-handed, so I suspect I'm pushing harder on the right or the left. I don't know, I'm pushing harder somewhere. It's impossible for me to be doing this totally even and uniform because I am not a machine. I'm not a machine. How about that? All right. Ta-ta. Phew. Okay, so let's pull this up. Now I'm going to let this completely dry because the one thing you don't want to do with polymer clay, you don't want to work water in. Okay, so just set it aside and let all that water dry off, and you'll be fine. But definitely do not work it back into your other clay. All right, so let's give this a go. Let me just pop this off at this point. Might help me out. All right, now let's pull slowly, try to get it out. Might not be the easiest thing to do today. Okay, come on, you can do it. So starting at one end maybe, and just slowly pull it out. If you work too fast, then the clay will tear and it may break, and you know, the usual. Working slow is definitely going to be the way to go, particularly with this little piece. So I'm holding it down and I'm just taking it out a bit at a time. Now maybe it's not going to work this time because maybe a part has a bit of a problem. And you know what? I think that there was a tiny problem here at the end. Might have been. Now can I correct it? Yeah, I think I can. Like so. But there may be instances where you push your clay in and you just can't get it out. You can't get it out. It keeps hanging up. Chances are, if that happens, it's hanging up in the same place. You know what that means? That means you probably have what we call an overhang. Now, an overhang is when the clay on the sides is kind of up and over. So what you have is a channel that is down here, but then you might have a little bit of clay up, and that holds the clay. So when you pull an impression, that clay wants to stick inside because it's got this little wall that's holding it there. So if after your first impression you find you have problems, you have issues, it's not coming out the way you want. This was actually pretty good except for that one place at the top. I'm going to take a file. This is a metal file. They're really cheap. I buy them from Harbor Freight. And I'm just going to take the edge of the file and go up over the clay at the top, okay? On both sides. So I'm just sort of scraping that edge. Because if the problem is an overhang, this will be enough to pretty much take care of it. You can see I'm just scraping. Let me go in a bit tighter so you can see. So I'm just scraping it away. So this first impression for you might not be a good one, but it might be an impression that tells you if you have any problems with your mold. Okay, here we go. So I didn't really have a problem down in this area. My problem in this area is that I did not pull a deep enough impression in that area, so I'm going to do it again. And perhaps I will go over. As you can see, this isn't difficult and it's pretty darn fast. So if you get any of these metal file sets, and seriously, last time I bought these, I think I paid like $1.50 for 12. You know, they're different shapes and you won't probably be using all the shapes, but hey, this is not something that's going to cost you a lot of money. Okay, so let me do this. Let me try to pull out another impression. This one I could work with, but really, it's less this I'm concerned about and more the shallowness over here, which means I wasn't pushing quite hard enough. luckily, this is not really hard to do. Okay, so I will be back, but you can see that I've worked on trying to eliminate any overhangs I might have. But as I said, really this one area was the problem, and then this was my problem, and it was a pressure problem. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so I tried to pull another impression, and it was a disaster. Yeah, but it's kind of a good thing it was a disaster, because this is an opportunity to talk about clay buildup. Yeah, you get clay buildup and the clay sticks to the clay, right? Right. You know it. So what I'm doing here is just trying to remove the clay buildup. Now, I think I'm also going to make the sheet thicker. I think that was another function. Another reason it wasn't successful. These little dots are not the easiest to clean, but we'll do it. Okay. This is alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. And that's what is going to eliminate any clay buildup. I decided to include my failure because it's not always good when things go well. When things go well and then you're at home going, why didn't this work? Yeah. So let me condition fresh clay. All of this has to dry out over here. Yeah, so I can't use it. So let me condition some fresh clay and I will be back. Okay, peeps, we're gonna try this again. Yeah, that clay is almost dry. Woohoo. This is fresh clay that I have rolled through setting number 1. Remember, we were on number 2 before. This time, it is setting number 1, thicker. Let's just put this down. Maybe I'll roll it this way. A little bit of water on the back. Stand up again. Stand up again. All right, are we ready? I think we are. Now, I'm really pushing hard. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If this doesn't work, I think I'm going to lower my standards. Okay. Da, 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 da. Oh, look at that. It just came right out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ta-ta. So much better, so much better. I'm happy. All right, now I have to let this dry out. Just don't want a lot of water anywhere. So let me let all this dry out and I will be back. All right, dry on a tile. Let's just cut the excess away. Okay, here we go. It's a bit easier to move the tile than it is to move the blade. Of course, this tile seems to be sticking a little on the back. You know, not sure why. Could be schmutz or something on the back that's making the tile stick a little more. Sometimes the tile, if it's clean on the back, is going to move pretty freely. You can move it. Okay, well, we did it. There you go. All right, so at this point, what I'm going to do is take my ball stylus. We'll use the finer one. And let's just start adding some texture to the base. I'm not trying to texture the elevated lines. I'm just going to be lightly texturing the flat surface. Like so. And I'm not really incising very deeply. Just kind of lightly on the surface of the clay. A little bit of texture. We'll add a little bit of dimension to the powder. This is, of course, optional. You could leave it totally flat and tint it. Okay. So you can lightly drag the tool through, or you can put little holes. Up to you. So let's follow the curve of our spiral, like so. Okay. Okay, kids, so I think that's all we're going to do. I'm going to leave this area flat like that, and we'll see what happens. Now, let's prepare our powders, because we got some tinting to do. Okay, first I'm going to hit these areas with a little bit of this red powder. I've got a nice soft brush here. Now, I'm not too concerned, well, I'm not concerned at all about getting the powder up on the lines. I think it's going to be fine. We're going to be adding that paint later, so we'll cover everything up. Like so. Whoops, sorry. Okay, now let's add another color. What color should we add? Let's add violet. A little bit of violet here. Maybe just on that side. Now, as I said, you can do a lot of layering with these powders. So if that you don't like that, you can try layering another color on. Okay, now the background I'm going to make green, and I'm going to use this green, a kind of interference green. Let's see how this goes on. I'll work out of the gap. Now, I like this color a lot, but you can see that the green really shows up, not much of the gold. So I'm going to add gold. I do really like this powder, though. Okay, so let's take some of this gold. This gold. Like the gold. The particles of the gold seem to be a little bit larger. But that's okay too. I just want to tint parts. Don't want to completely cover up the green, but just make this a little more interesting rather than just having a flat color. Just a bit. Okay, so let's make the waves blue and violet. Start with the blue and then hit it with the violet. Okay, let's hit this with the violet. Okay. That's a little dull to me. Let's see, what can I put on top of it? What's this? Blush. Let's see what blush does. You never know. Let's just apply a little bit of this blush here and there and see if we can make this area just a bit more lively than it is. Don't necessarily want to change it all that much, but just add just the tiniest bit, a little bit more life to it. This stuff is pretty powerful. Blush. Blush, blush, blush. And it could change slightly after it's cured too, so we'll see. Now, what am I gonna make that? Those flowers. Hi, Lou. That's my dog, Lou. 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 Well, this is the red. I believe I already used the red. Was this red? I can't turn it over. Oh, no, this was rust. Yeah, let's try red. What's the difference between red and rust? We'll see. Well, there is a difference. That first one I used was a little more pink, actually, and this is a little bit deeper, so rust was a little pinker. Okay, should I add a secondary color on that? Perhaps a copper? What are you? You would be bronze. Let's see what bronze does. Ooh, I like bronze. Just a touch of bronze. Can I put you someplace else? Maybe a little bit there, maybe. How about, well, I don't know what Louie's barking about, but he's barking about something. Now this side appears to be a bit dark to me, so let me see. Now, bear in mind, all these lines are going to be gold, okay? So it's not going to be quite as dark. It won't be quite as dark, but let me just add a highlight here and there, just in case. Oh, none of this is so... And we'll see. While this can be messed up, I find that it's one of those things that's not the easiest thing to mess up. Now watch, I'm gonna mess it up. Okay. Just want a little bit more here to balance the amount I just stuck there. Maybe a little more balance up there. Maybe just a spot here. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done for now. So we'll see what it looks like. And remember, all these black lines, all these lines are going to be gold, so... Okay, wait. I think I want to put a little bit of green up in here. I know, could be a mistake. I mean, this could be the mistake I make. Just a hint. Just a hint. Just a little bit. Not too much. Just a tiny bit. Why not? Why not? Okay, that's it. I'm through messing. Now I'm going to put this in the oven. When it's done, I'll be back. I'll clean up this glittery, powdery mess I've made. It's all over the place. So this is cured. So now what you want to do, you want to take a brush. This is my everything brush. And just kind of try to get anything that might be in there up and out. Okay, looking a little dull to me, just a tad dull. But we'll see what happens after we hit the highlights with the gold and we back the whole thing. All right, so let's hit the highlights with the gold. Now what I'm going to use is Iridescent Rich Gold Paint by Liquitex. Yeah, I really like this paint a lot. Okay, the goal here is to hit only the lines and the high parts and not get any into the depressions. You'll probably get some into the depressions. I mean, I do. Because my chonky finger, I think it must get down there. I think it must. Something's getting down there. Anyway, it may happen. For me, it's not a tragedy. Now, sometimes I sand the raised lines. Yeah, sometimes I do. It just kind of depends. I don't think it's necessary in this case. That's why I didn't do it. I think the lines look just fine to me. So if your lines are looking good, I don't think you have to sand them. Because what happens too is when you sand clay, you get the clay dust. And if you get clay dust down in there, it tends to dull things down. You just don't want it. Okay. So you can see I just gather a bit of paint on my finger, you know, not too much. Just enough. And then just tap the raised areas with your fingers. And try just to paint those raised areas. Now, some of you might want to try using a brush. I'm better with my fingers than I am with a brush. Yeah. I know some of you can paint, though. So, someone like her, Teresa, she may want to use a brush. T, you might want to use a brush. But if I use a brush, it's just the paint's going to be everywhere. Okay, so that is one coat. So you can see what it does for even that dark area. Remember we were talking about how dark that was? Yeah, so it adds quite a bit of life. And of course now you can actually see the swirls and the spirals, which you could not see before. All right, so I am going to do that one more time because I think it's going to need one more layer of that gold paint. Then I will be back. All right, the next thing we have to do is put a pin back on. But first, you know what? I want to sand the edge down. I want to sand it because I'm going to be putting a thin sheet of black clay on the back and bringing it around the sides. So I've got to do some sanding. First I have to sand this edge, but then see this corner, or like that, where the back meets the side, there's a distinct corner. Yeah, well, I want to sand that down too. So let me grab my sandpaper. I'm using Abranet P150. Let me get some of the dust off. And I wrap it around this little sponge, like so. It's just a little bit easier to hold the paper rather than, you know, crunching my hands up around the paper. All right, so let us just sand the side, and then I want to round that corner right there. So this is what I'm going to do. From the back, I just take it like so. And it really doesn't take much to do, but it's going to make my life easier when I'm backing the piece. Okay. Like so. I love this Abranet. I have pretty much switched everything over to either using Abranet when I want to take a lot of clay off, a lot of material has to be removed, or I'm using micro mesh if I want to prepare some clay for buffing, sanding and buffing, if I want a shiny surface to the clay itself. Then in a situation like that, I'm using micro mesh. Now, if you don't have access to either of those materials, you can of course use wet dry sandpaper that you get at the hardware store. Or if it doesn't say wet dry, it's automotive sandpaper. And you work it in water. All right, so I think that that's pretty good. I'm going to stop there. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have no grit. And I wish I had done it before because, well, it's probably a good thing I did it now so I can show you. But see how the gold is less shiny? You know what that is? That's the polymer grit. You get that polymer grit on paint, things like that. It tends to dull it down like that. So you want to, I probably should have sanded it before. Now, if this happens to you and your gold paint or your paint gets dulled down, then all you have to do is put another coat on. So it's not like it's permanently ruined or anything like that. If you happen to do what I just did in reverse order, not really a problem. Just, you know, a little extra work, that's all. But you can see how much brighter this is than over here. Yeah, well, that's the polymer clay grit that has settled onto the paint. And I have not found that you can just wipe it off. I mean, it really sticks. So just repaint it. Let's see, I got a little more paint down here on the perfect pearl. See right there? But I've also found that that's not necessarily a bad thing. Brighten it up just a tiny bit. So that's okay. All right, let's let this dry for a moment. I'm going to take my black clay, it's all dry, and roll this through about a setting 5. I'll be back. So let's put our finding on. I'm going to be using this guy, Titech finding. Take my Loctite glue. This is what I use, Loctite super glue, ultra gel control. And let's just put this on. It's always a good idea to press your finding down to whatever you're gluing to make sure that you're actually gluing the finding to the clay, not to the glue. It happens. Okay, so this little piece of clay has been rolled through setting number 5 is what I want. Here we go. Let's do 5 in my pasta machine. And I'm going to take my dual plex refrigerator liner and I'm going to texture this nice clay. Now, this sheet of clay is rather thin through setting 5. This sheet of dual plex is not quite so thin. So I'm going to back off the setting of my machine from 5 to 4. 4 is slightly thicker. And that's so I can texture but not grind the clay in. Oh, I made a mistake. That was setting number 3. It hardly touched. Okay, so here we go through setting 4, which is what I wanted and didn't do the last time. So you can see it transfers that nice texture. Now I'm going to take my liquid clay. Yes, this is polymer clay in liquid form. And I'm going to put a nice thin coat of liquid clay on the cured clay. This improves the bond between the cured clay and the raw clay. I wouldn't say that it's absolutely essential in all cases, but I would also say it doesn't hurt. It never hurts. As long as you don't put too much of it on. You want just enough. But if you put too much on, you'll find that the liquid clay starts to actually melt your clay. So yeah, you don't want to put too much on. Not too much. Okay, so let's just take and put this on. Push, push, push. Push, push, push. Like so. Let's flip it over, remove the excess because it just gets in the way. Yeah, you can trust me on that. It's just like, why is all this clay here? Too much clay, too much. Okay, that's a good start. Now, from the back, I'm just pushing up and holding for just a second. Now here, we've got to try to get an excessive amount of clay over that smaller space. You can do it. You want to check the back every now and then. And here, we're trying to stretch the clay so that it covers the sides. Okay, not too bad, not too bad. Just like that. Now, the thicker the sheet of black clay or clay that is covering the back, the thicker the line that outlines the whole piece. So I am just taking my blade and sliding it across like that. Like so. You always want to make sure that that black clay or the clay from the back is snug against the piece. You don't want it to gap out at all. So just try to make sure that it's snug. Okay. Okay, there we go. Almost done. Just want to glide it across the cured clay. Okay. You know what? I think that looks pretty darn good. Maybe a little bit extra here. And we have a boomerang. Now, at this point, you're going to want to put your signature cane or somehow mark it with your signature. I think I have a better piece of cane. Let's check this guy. I have enough cane for the rest of my life. I don't have to make any more signatures. Okay, so here we go. Let's just put it there. And now I will cure this. So I cure the back, and I will cure it face down like that on a tile. Yeah. And when that's done, we're going to move on. All right, peeps, here we are at the end. Now, you know, in my book, I use liquid clay. I flush this with liquid clay, and I put it back in the oven. And you know what? That works. It works. But I think I'm going to use UV resin instead. Okay, so I need a toothpick, a long one. And this is Let's Resin UV resin clear hard type. I love this stuff. Okay. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to take a brush. You want to just brush the surface, make sure that you've got nothing loose in there. Now let's put our resin in. This stuff doesn't even require mixing, which I have to say I really like. I have some other that you have to mix, and you know, it's okay. So I'm just gonna flood the center, and then I think I'll start trying to push some of this to the perimeter. Okay. All right. So, of course, this does have to cure under a UV light. Let's Resin has their own, which I'm going to use. It's really cute. It's a small one. I have another one that I was using for my nails when I was trying to do gel polish. And I have to say my nails looked good when I did it, but boy, getting that stuff off wasn't easy. So I went back to conventional nail polish. So I'm just kind of pushing it out like so. Just push it out. And I'm hoping not to run off the edge. Yeah. I don't really want to run off the edge. If I run off the edge, all of this will run off. The whole piece. You know, it's a little iffy. You know, it's like a little dangerous in through there. If I have a little too much, oops. Oh, that would have been bad. Maybe I'll just remove some. It's less likely to go off the edge if there's just a little less material, I think. Just scoop some off. Yeah, well, I have done this and put so much on it floods off. So I really hope that doesn't happen here. Okay, now let's take a look and see what's cooking. Because you're going to find air pockets. See, that might be an air bubble there. Every now and then you see little air bubbles. Because the stuff is thick, so it's quite easy to trap air in any of these very fine crevices and texture marks. So I'm going to take a lighter. This is just a lighter with a long neck. And start it up and just take the flame and just brush it along the top of the resin. And if there are any air bubbles at the top, they will pop. Something that's deeper in might take a little while to work its way to the surface, however. So you have to be a little bit careful. You don't want to use like a torch, otherwise this stuff will blow all over. So it's got to be kind of an old-fashioned lighter. Okay, so how are we doing? I'm going to let this sit for a few minutes because sometimes, you know, those bubbles, if there are bubbles in there, I can't see them now, but sometimes they do appear if I wait just a little while. So I'm going to wait about 10 minutes and see if anything appears before I stick this under the UV light. Okay, peeps, I waited a few minutes. Nothing appeared, so I'm going to take it to my UV lamp and I'm going to cure it for 120 seconds or 2 minutes. I'll be back. All right, peeps, we're at the end of class, so let's take a look. You know, I made one in silver with silver paint. Here's the gold paint. Used, of course, the same texture plate. So make them again and again and again. Different colors, different paints. Yeah, it goes on and on. You're all set as long as you don't lose it. But if you lose it, you know how to make it, and it wasn't very difficult, was it? Here's one I made as well. Yeah, there we go. Now, when I used the Let's Resin, this stuff is really great. I did have to do 2 coats. First coat was just a little bit thin, and I think this stuff contracts just a little bit, so you could, when I flashed it back and forth like this, the surface wasn't totally smooth. You could see the impression of the raised lines. So I had to do it twice, no big deal. Second time's actually easier than the first. This was done twice. This was done twice as well. I really like this resin stuff. It's pretty easy to use. I'm not an expert at it, so I will tell you, if I can do it, anyone can. Anyone can do it if I can do it. I guarantee that. Okay, so that's it for today's class. I hope you enjoyed it. I had fun making these again. I hadn't made them since 2006. So that's a very long time. Anyway, thank you for watching. And if you like the class, please subscribe and please hit like. And I hope to see you in another one. I am Donna Kato, and I am signing off. Bye.